Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time of flickering torches, muddy streets, and way too many layers of wool. We're diving into the world of medieval dating. Yes, that was a thing, and trust me, it's nothing like swiping right. Imagine catching someone's eye across a dusty village square while dodging a runaway pig and the occasional flying cabbage. There are no DMs, no coffee shops, no scented candles, lest you count burning tallow. You think dating today is hard. In the 1300s, just making eye contact with the wrong person could get you publicly whipped, married off, or worsened to a monastery. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment with your location and local time. Let's see where everyone's listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through the clamor of a medieval market barefoot because shoes are a luxury, and you're trying not to step in anything suspicious. The air smells like sweat, spices, old cheese, and a hint of horse. Vendors shout about cabbages and eel pies, and someone's playing a crude fiddle that sounds more like a dying cat than music. Then you see them. Maybe it's the curve of a smile under a linen hood, or the way they're confidently haggling over a turnip. But for a second, the chaos dims, you lock eyes. Except now what? You can't walk up and say, "Hey, what's your sign?" First off, astrology is mostly reserved for court wizards and church debates. Second, you're likely surrounded by 5 members of their family and a couple of chickens. Romance here starts with a glance, maybe held too long, maybe returned with the slightest of nods. It's a dance without music, a signal that might mean, "I'm interested," or just, "I have something in my eye." Still, this is the game. You're not allowed to talk too much, touch at all, or even ask someone their name unless introduced by a third party, usually a parent, a priest, or, if you're unlucky, your local feudal lord. Historians still argue whether these glances and subtle exchanges were socially accepted or covertly condemned. It seems to have varied wildly by region, class, and what kind of day the local bishop was having. But say luck is on your side. You glance again. They're still looking. You pretend to examine some apples. You peek. Still there. Is that a smile? Your heart's pounding now, not from passion, necessarily, but because you might be about to commit a sin, or worse, attract attention, because privacy, you see, is not a medieval concept. You live with family, sleep beside siblings, and confess your secrets to a priest, who may also be your neighbor. Even the nobles, locked behind stone walls, are followed by servants. You're being watched by everyone. And that little glance, it spreads. By sunset, the blacksmith's apprentice is nudging you with a grin. "So, I heard you were eyeing the baker's daughter." You laugh it off, say you were just looking at her bread. No one believes you, and frankly, no one cares. Romance is entertainment. It's also dangerous. A noble might be fined, or worse if they consort with someone of lower status. A peasant might be punished for even thinking above their rank. And don't forget the church, ever looming, warning that lustful thoughts could lead straight to eternal damnation. You try not to think lustfully, but it's hard when someone looks that good in a potato sack. Quirky fact: in some parts of Europe, love divination games were popular among young people. They'd drop snails into ashes to see whose name they spelled, or recite rhymes while plucking petals as the medieval version of "they love me not." Love and superstition went hand in hand, often literally. You go home that night with butterflies, not metaphorically. There are actual bugs in your bed straw, but you lie there, thinking about that glance. Was it real? Did they feel it too? Will you see them again tomorrow, maybe near the ale barrels? And here's the kicker. Even if you do see them again, and you do fall in love, and you do win the approval of every family member, priest, and livestock animal involved, you still might not get to marry them, because in the Middle Ages, love didn't equal marriage. Marriage was politics, land, survival. Love was a side dish rarely served, but that doesn't stop you, because humans, as always, are weirdly stubborn when it comes to love. Even if your entire village is against it, even if the odds are bleak, even if your best move is just standing beside the cabbage cart at the same time every day hoping for a glance, you keep showing up. The next morning, you head out earlier than usual. You say it's for the bread, but let's be honest, it's for the hope that today you'll see them again. that maybe this time they'll say something, or you will, or, in a rare twist of fate, neither of you will be interrupted by a runaway goat. You scan the square. Carts roll in, wheels creaking over cobblestones. The fishmonger is yelling again about his still twitching trout. A bell tolls somewhere in the distance. The sun is rising, but still nothing. Then a flash of that linen hood. There they are, same smile, same confident way of moving. You're suddenly aware of how much you smell like hay. You wipe your hands on your tunic and realize it's not helping. Because here's the deal, no one smells good in the Middle Ages. Hygiene is more rumor than practice, and the closest thing to deodorant is rubbing rosemary under your arms if you can afford it. More likely, you've just got sweat, animal musk, and eau de latrine. And yet, here you are, preparing to flirt. But what even is flirting in this time? It's not a wink across the pub, or a flirty text. No, it's a carefully calculated move involving proximity, posture, and the occasional compliment about someone's oxen. You sidle a little closer to the stall next to theirs. You pick up a turnip and pretend to examine it like it holds the secrets of the universe. Those are good this season, they say. Suddenly, your heart does that thing again. Oh, you reply suavely. You know your root vegetables. Nice, nailed it. And that's the first exchange. It may be small, but it matters. You shared a moment. And here's the kicker. Medieval flirting wasn't about being bold. It was about not getting caught. Because while no one was bathing often, everyone was watching everything. Gossip was faster than a viral video and twice as brutal. Sometimes people met during religious festivals, ostensibly holy occasions where, oddly enough, flirting bloomed like spring wheat. Dancing in circles, never touching, of course, locking eyes across the candlelit procession, accidentally bumping elbows during a Saint's Day feast. This was where the sparks flew. Quietly, carefully. You wouldn't dare touch their hand. Not unless you were already planning your vows or hoping to spend a week in the stocks. Historians still argue whether medieval folks were emotionally repressed or just masters of subtlety. Some say their culture suppressed romantic expression. Others argue it simply channeled it through poetry, symbolism, and an almost comical overuse of longing sighs. Speaking of which, let's talk body language. Posture meant everything. Standing tall, facing someone fully. Bold, too bold. Better, to keep your shoulders angled, eyes flicking occasionally, hands modestly folded. You don't want to look eager. That's suspicious. You want to look like someone who just happens to be standing near the same stack of cabbages. Again, one quirky tidbit. In 14th century Italy, young men sometimes wore absurdly tight hose, specifically to attract attention. Fashion was a form of flirtation. The tighter the pants, the more eligible the bachelor. Never mind that they couldn't walk properly, or breathe. And women, they had their own codes. Braids could mean maidenhood. A certain veil angle might signal availability. Some even subtly applied crushed flower petals to their lips for color. Medieval lipstick. Basically, of course, you have competition, always. Someone else is also admiring their root vegetable expertise, and you, my dear cabbage cart loiterer, must stand out. Not with wit or gifts or broke, but with presence. You show up. You linger just long enough to be noticed, but not enough to be labeled a creep by the town gossips. Flirting here is like playing chess blindfolded, in a thunderstorm, while the bishop lectures you about sin. You say something about the weather. They laugh, probably because it hasn't stopped raining for 3 months, and everyone's soaked. Still, it's a moment. A warm flicker in a damp world. And then their mother appears. She's stern-faced, eyes like hawk talons, and already suspicious. You smile politely. She narrows her gaze. This interaction is over. You back away with the awkward grace of someone retreating from battle. But there's a grin on your face. Because you spoke. You made them laugh. You flirted. In your own muddy, smelly, brilliant way. Back at home, you're teased mercilessly by your siblings. Did you declare your undying love over parsnips? One cackles. You throw a crust of bread at them. They dodge, laughing. You lie awake again that night. The straw pokes your back, and the room smells of onions and damp wool. But you don't care. You're thinking about that laugh, that glimmer of connection. The Middle Ages were brutal wars, plagues, famine. But people still found time to fall in love, to giggle about turnips, to show up every day, hoping for just one more glance. Tomorrow, you'll go back, not because you need more vegetables, but because maybe, just maybe, they'll be there too. The next time you see them, it's during the feast day of St. Agnes, a popular event that promises roasted goose, lukewarm mead, and at least 3 incidents involving someone falling into a barrel. The town square is buzzing. People wear their best tunics, meaning the ones with fewer holes, and even the pigs seem to have been given a quick scrub. You're there early. Again, you pretend to help hang garlands, but mostly you just keep an eye on the crowd. You see them eventually dressed a little finer today, hair braided in a way that makes your breath catch just a bit. They're walking beside a tall figure in a wool cloak. You freeze. Could be a brother, could be a suitor, could be their entire family tree rolled into one person, so you wait. Not close, not far, just in the vague proximity of maybe we'll talk again. And then, the moment comes. Hello again, they say, eyes amused. You reply with a dazzling hi, and then stand there like someone who's just seen a dragon. Smooth, very smooth, before anything else can be said. A woman in robes sidles up to you both. She's ancient, possibly immortal, and definitely a nun. Sister Heloise, the kind of person who can make you feel guilty just by blinking. She plants herself between you like a stone wall wearing a crucifix. Are you two acquainted? She asks, with the sweet menace of someone who's about to report you to a parish priest. And your mother? We've spoken. They say calm, poised, braver than you. Sister Heloise nods, but she doesn't move. She is the official chaperone now, the guardian of virtue. And you're suddenly in a 2-person date with a 3rd person who's armed with scripture and 0 patience. Chaperones were standard in many medieval communities, especially among the middle and upper classes. A young woman wasn't supposed to be alone with a man unless marriage was imminent or someone had already paid a dowry. The church hand, your neighbors watched these things like hawks with rosaries. Historians still argue whether this strict surveillance was universally enforced or more regional. But there's no denying that your love life now has a literal audience. You try to talk anyway. You mention the music. They smile. You ask if they've tried the goose. Sister Heloise answers instead, it's dry. So you do what any resourceful medieval flirt would do. You suggest a walk around the square. You ask, nonchalantly, as if this isn't the biggest risk you've taken since pretending to tithe last Lent. They nod, and off you go, Sister Heloise, trailing exactly 3 paces behind, like a determined barn owl. You talk about everything and nothing. The weather always bad, the upcoming harvest probably worse, and which neighbor fell in the well last week. It was Thomas. Again, it's not poetry, but it's honest. And more importantly, you're walking together. Quirky detail. Some towns had literal courting benches in public squares, designated seating areas where couples could talk under supervision. Romantic in theory, but also very awkward when 3 other couples and a goat share the same bench. Your walk feels strangely formal, like a procession for 2, narrated by a judgmental saint. You notice how careful they are with their words, how they lower their gaze slightly when you smile, how their hand brushes against yours by accident. Maybe maybe not. You wonder if Sister Heloise saw. Probably. She misses nothing. Eventually, you circle back. The music is louder now. Someone's playing a hurdy-gurdy, which is like a violin that's been cursed. People are dancing, in long lines and slow steps. Men and women, alternating, hands just barely brushing in carefully choreographed moves. Do you dance? They ask. You don't. Not well. But you say, sometimes. And then, somehow, you're in line, being shuffled into a set of movements designed to keep bodies close but souls holy. You step wrong. Twice. They laugh. You feel your ears heat up like hot iron. Dancing was often one of the few socially accepted ways to engage physically, albeit briefly. It was watched, regulated, and sometimes condemned, especially if the dancers got too lively. But still, it was a loophole, a way to feel near someone without breaking the rules. Historians still debate whether medieval dancing was more about ritual or rebellion. You're leaning toward rebellion. You're leaning toward rebellion, especially when your fingers brush again. And this time, linger a second longer. After the dance, you're breathless, not just from the exertion, but from the contact. The possibilities, the soft glow in their eyes. But the night is ending. Curfew approaches. Fires are being doused. Sister Heloise clears her throat with a sound like a closing tomb. You look at them, they look at you. We'll see each other again, you ask. They nod. I'll be at the market. You smile, and this time, as you part ways, you feel something shift, like maybe, despite the layers of wool and supervision and rules and expectations, something real is growing, not a declaration, not a promise, but a maybe. And in the Middle Ages, maybe was a miracle. You don't sleep much that night, not just because the thatch roof leaks or the chickens keep flapping around in your loft. No, tonight, your thoughts loop around that smile, that touch, that small promise made under flickering torchlight, that market is tomorrow, which means it's time for strategy. You don't have a rose, you don't even have a spare shirt. What you do have is a scrap of old parchment, a stub of charcoal, and a half-formed poem that may or may not rhyme. And you've decided, risky as it may be, you're going to write them a letter. In the Middle Ages, love letters were a bold move. Nobles sent elaborately phrased declarations, dripping with metaphor and sealed in wax. Commoners, they had fewer resources, no court poets, no fancy ink, but the intent was the same. Words on parchment were powerful, personal, and sometimes dangerous. You fumble through your lines. Your hair is like, well, it's not like wheat, because that's cliché. You scratch that out. How do I express my interest in your presence without sounding like I have the plague? Better, sort of. The letter ends up awkward and slightly smudged, but it's earnest. You fold it, tuck it into a sliver of cloth, and wrap it in beeswax paper to keep it dry. Or, less damp. Historians still argue whether letter among peasants was widespread or limited to clergy and the literate elite. But evidence of simple notes, trading tokens, and even oral messages suggests that people found creative ways to express affection, whether they could read or not. And here's your secret weapon. The baker's youngest son. He's small, fast, and nosy. You bribe him with a heel of cheese to deliver your note subtly. He promises he'll be like a ghost, which, as it turns out, means running up to them in broad daylight, shouting, "Hey, love stuff." You cringe from behind a crate of leeks. They take the note, open it, read. And then, they smile. It's hard to describe the relief of seeing someone not immediately set fire to your affections. That little smile, half amusement, half curiosity's a bomb. And more than that, it's a sign. They didn't run. They didn't report you. You've opened a new door. The next time you talk, they mention it casually. Your handwriting is very bold. You laugh. Thank you, I think. They don't mention the awkward metaphors, but they do suggest walking again, with Sister Heloise otherwise occupied, perhaps distracted by the town's new supply of forbidden board games. They're free for once, so you walk, just the two of you, and for the first time conversation flows. No chaperone, no forced festival, small talk, just words, real and raw, about favorite foods, annoying siblings, and what you'd do if you were rich. Answer: probably not farm geese. You learn they like to read, when they can, that they once helped a wounded cat in secret because their mother hates animals indoors, that they dream of seeing the ocean, even though they're not sure if it's real or just a story made up by merchants. In return, you tell them about your grandfather's superstitions, how he thinks dreams predict the weather, how you once tried to build a raft, failed spectacularly, and got scolded for 3 days straight. How you've always felt a bit like, well, like your heart's too big for the village. They laugh softly. I know that feeling. And then, they pause. From under their cloak, they produce a folded piece of parchment note, but it's been added to. Beneath your lines, they've written back, it's not a reply, exactly, more like a continuation, a poem, of sorts. You wrote back, well, I couldn't let your root vegetable metaphor go unanswered. It's ridiculous, it's beautiful, it's better than anything you've ever been given. No coin, no favor, no loaf of bread has ever meant as much as this little scrap of paper. Quirky detail. Some medieval lovers, especially noble women, perfumed their letters with crushed herbs or pressed them with dried flowers. One surviving letter from the 1400s even came with instructions for how the recipients should smell it first before reading. A multisensory flirt. Yours smells mostly like beeswax and pocket lint. But still, the tradition of letter exchanges, especially in secrecy, was a vital part of many medieval romances. Some nobles even employed go-betweens, trusted friends, or servants to ferry love notes under the radar of disapproving parents or jealous rivals. A little like your miniature cheese-fueled courier. Historians debate whether these romantic correspondences led to actual relationships, or were more of a fantasy game. But in this moment, fantasy or not, You feel more connected than ever. You sit under a tree now, side by side, the poem between you. The sun is low, turning the dirt paths to gold. You don't hold hands. You don't need to. This is your love story, messy, improbable, and scrawled in bad handwriting. But it's yours. And tomorrow, maybe another note, maybe another walk, maybe more. For now, you just sit there to people in a world that's too loud, too smelly, too rigid, finding peace in a letter. You wake up with bruises, not from a fight, but from practicing jousting with a pitchfork handle and an overturned washtub. Why? Because you heard a rumor. Apparently, a nobleman once won the heart of a lady by besting 3 suitors in a tournament. So naturally, your brain said, what if I, a humble nobody with a questionable knowledge of horses, prove my affection through valor? You're sore, but inspired. The Middle Ages were no stranger to live through combat. Knights in shining armor didn't just fight for glory, they fought for her favor, or his, or the vague approval of someone in a very high tower. Jousting tournaments, melees, and even archery contests often had romantic stakes. Win, and maybe you get a scarf. Lose, and, well, concussions were common. Of course, you're not a knight. You don't even own shoes, let alone armor. But that doesn't mean you can't play the part. You recruit your friend, Roland, who's slightly taller and slightly more reckless, to be your opponent. Your horse is 2 barrels tied together. Your lance is a broomstick. The village children are delighted. The village adults are less so. Still, you set the stage in the clearing near the mill, where wildflowers poke through the grass and the air smells only mildly of fermented oats. You've invited them to watch. Of course, your reason for bruising your spleen is sitting nearby with a polite smile and a look that says, what on earth is happening? Roland charges first, flailing like a drunken windmill. You dodge barely. Then it's your turn. You wobble forward with the grace of a falling tree, and miraculously don't collapse. You tap Roland's shoulder. He yelps and flings himself off the barrel like a true romantic martyr. The children cheer. A goat eats part of your makeshift armor. Your beloved claps, laughing so hard they nearly spill cider. Victory. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval tournaments included courts of love, presided over by noble women who judged not the fighting, but the poetry, courtesy, and style of the participants. Yes, even back then, it was a talent show and a beauty contest. You limp over, flushed and panting. Was it impressive, you ask? They grin. I've never seen anyone fall off a barrel with such dignity. You both laugh. This, somehow, is even better than a poem. But don't get too comfortable, because across the field, someone's watching. Someone taller, better dressed, and, annoyingly, still clean. Sir Garrick. Ugh, Sir Garrick. He's the actual knight in the area, though no one knows what battles he's fought besides wrestling a peacock out of his garden. He's handsome, smug, and has been known to compose mediocre ballads about himself. He walks over, glances at your broomstick lance, and smirks. Practicing for something, just enjoying the breeze, you reply, brushing hay off your head. Your love interest looks between you and Garrick, clearly amused. Perhaps Sir Garrick would like to demonstrate. Oh no, Garrick says, with a mock bow. I would never interfere in such tender performances. The tension is thick, like soup, like turnip soup, but you hold your ground. Historians still argue whether love-based competitions were genuine expressions of affection, or just flashy displays of ego wrapped in steel. The truth is probably both. Humans haven't changed that much. We still compete for attention, even if it's with a TikTok dance. Now instead of a warhorse, you limp back home, exhausted and kind of thrilled. Today, you weren't just a farmer or a fishmonger's cousin. Today, you were a romantic hero with questionable reflexes and a spectacular tumble. That night, as you soak your bruises in a bucket and curse every splinter from your armor, you get a visitor. It's them, standing in your doorway with a bundle of herbs and a mischievous smile. For the swelling, they say, and maybe your pride. You thank them. They linger. The fire crackles between you. I liked the tournament, they say softly. Even the goat part. You chuckle. I'd fight 10 goats if it made you smile. They look at Eurylie, look at Yuan for a second. The world slows. The bruise doesn't ache. The wind hushes. Even the chickens outside seem to pause. Then they speak. Don't get yourself killed trying to impress me. I'll try, you whisper. And just like that, they leave. You lie awake, Again, this time, less anxious, more full, because today, you did something foolish, yes, potentially bone-breaking, absolutely, but real. For them, for love. Tomorrow, you'll rest. He'll maybe sharpen your poem writing instead of your broomstick, but you'll remember the way they smiled, and that's enough for now. The sun is already high when you wake the next day, a rare indulgence. Your joints ache, your ribs twinge, and you're fairly certain there's hay stuck in places hay should never be. But none of that matters. You've started something real. But as you stretch and wince, your way toward the well for water, a neighbor hisses your name. You'd best be careful, she says, eyes darting. People are talking. Your heart dips into your stomach. Talking. Apparently someone saw the little tournament. Someone else saw the walk. And now, a third someone, possibly, that goat has turned it into a full-blown scandal in the making. Rumors spread like butter on warm bread, only greasier. They're courting. Someone says, no, they're secretly married. I heard he's enchanted her with cabbage magic. You wish that last one weren't believable. This is where it gets complicated. In the Middle Ages, dating wasn't just a personal affair, it was political, social, familial. Every relationship had implications, especially in smaller villages, where everyone's business was everyone's business. And now, people are asking questions. Have you spoken to her father? Does your family approve? Do you have land? That last one stings, because the truth is you don't have land, you don't have money, you don't even have a cow to your name. And here's the worst part, your family doesn't approve. Your mother, practical and sharp-tongued, folds laundry, like she's wringing out your future. What can you offer? She asks flatly. Dreams don't build roofs, you protest. She likes me, I like her. And what has liking ever paid for? You don't have an answer, because in the eyes of your family and in much of medieval society, marriage is a transaction, a contract. Affection is optional, livestock is not. Historians still argue whether love marriages were rare or simply less documented. Most surviving records are about alliances, dowries, and status, not longing glances and impromptu jousts. But here's the thing, arranged marriages weren't just for nobles. Even among peasants, parents had a say. Marrying for love could disrupt plans, inheritances, work arrangements, even village politics, and if you did try to go against those plans, there were consequences. In some regions, defying your family's wishes could lead to disownment or worse. There are stories of couples thrown out of their homes, forced to beg or flee. And if you happened to catch the wrong person's attention, you might not be married off. You might be imprisoned or pressed into service. Quirky tidbit. In a few medieval towns, there were marriage markets, where families quite literally shopped for spouses for their children, weighing attributes like strength, dowry, and fertility like goods on a table. Romantic? No. So now, you're caught. You like her. She likes you. But your village is tightening around you like a noose of opinions and expectations. One afternoon, you're summoned. Her father wants to speak with you. You go, heart thudding, hands clammy. His house is nicer than yours, thicker walls, bigger windows, fewer visible rodents. He sits at a table, broad-shouldered and silent for a long moment. Finally, he asks, "What are your intentions?" It's the medieval version of the classic parent interrogation, except with more emphasis on sheep and sin. "I care for her," you say honestly. "I want to marry her. Someday," he grunts. "Someday" doesn't feed mouths. You nod, because he's not wrong. He lays out his terms, not cruel, but firm. If this relationship continues, there must be a plan. You must find work, earn, coin, secure lodging, prove yourself. Then he'll consider it. It's not a no, it's a test. You leave, thoughts spinning. You want to be angry at the world, the system, your own lack of assets. But deep down, you understand. Survival comes first. Love is a luxury. But that doesn't make it any less real. You meet her that evening, in the quiet behind the chapel, where the shadows fall long and safe. "He talked to you, didn't he?" she says. You nod, and he didn't slam the door. She smiles, soft but sad. "That's better than most." You stand there, close but not touching, hearts full of maybes. You want to promise her the world, but you don't even own a shovel. "I'll try," you whisper. "I'll work, I'll make something." Enough. She turns to you, eyes fierce. "I don't care about land, or cows, or coins. I care about you." "But they do," you murmur. She sighs. Then let's give them what they want. And suddenly, a plan begins. You'll find labor. You'll save every scrap of copper. You'll build slowly, stubbornly something worth their approval, not for them, for her. Because even in a world where marriage is a business contract and love is treated like an accident, you're determined to make it count. You find work the next morning, grueling, bone-cracking work. The blacksmith needs an apprentice, and while you know nothing about iron beyond, don't touch the glowing parts. You nod enthusiastically and start sweeping. The forge is hot, enough to cook thoughts. Every breath tastes like soot. Your arms ache after an hour. By midday, you feel like your bones are being melted into horseshoes. But still, you endure, because every strike of the hammer is a promise. I'm building something. I'm becoming someone. And not just for yourself. She visits you once, midweek, under the excuse of picking up nails for her father. Her face shines with pride, and a hint of warrior tunic is scorched in 3 places. Your hair smells like singed duck feathers, and your hands are bandaged in charcoal-blackened linen. You look heroic, she says. You grin through the pain. I'm not even allowed near the bellows yet. Historians still debate whether love was more genuine among the working class, free from the twisted politics of courtship among nobles. What's clear is this: hard work, sacrifice, and shared struggle built deeper connections than any poetic verse. And this work is a sacrifice. You wake up sore, sleep in soot, and eat whatever the baker's boy throws at your face before dawn. But slowly, things shift. The blacksmith trusts you to heat iron dot, then to hold it, then one glorious day, to strike it. The clang rings out your first proper blow. The metal bends, just slightly. Your heart swells more than the red-hot iron. That night, you find her again, not behind the chapel this time, but at the old watchtower, where the wind whistles through broken stone. You sit side by side, watching clouds drift in the moonlight. I made a nail today, you say. She gasps, teasing. My hero, just the one. You clarify, and it's bent. You'll get there. And somehow, that matters more than any official blessing. Quirky fact: in some medieval towns, if a craftsman or apprentice wanted to marry, the guild had to approve. They judged whether he was skilled and stable enough to support a household. Love had a waiting list and a skills test. You're not in a guild. Not yet. But the rhythm of work is steady now. Predictable. Each day is a brick in the invisible house you're building, one they'll all eventually see. But you're not the only one planning. She's doing her own kind of rebellion. Smartly, she's helping her mother at the market, learning to read accounts, handling coin, not flashy, not loud, but preparing, equipping herself. I'm not going to wait around and braid onions until someone lets me choose, she says once. That fire, in her eyes, it's why you fell in love in the first place. But love still isn't safe. Not here, not yet. One evening, while you're packing tools at the forge, a shadow falls over the doorway. You glance up and find yourself face to face with the local curate. His expression is unreadable. His robes smell of incense and something less pleasant. Judgment. Maybe a word, he says. You wipe your hands and follow him outside. Hear rumors, he begins, of inappropriate meetings between a young man and a respectable girl. You swallow hard. She's not. There's nothing. You stop. Defending her would make it worse. She is seen often, he continues, alone, lingering, speaking in private. He pauses. Would you say your intentions are honorable? It's not a question, it's a demand. Yes, you say firmly. I want to marry her. The curate studies you. Good, then speak to her father again. Do it properly. You nod. Because, in the Middle Ages, even your feelings require paperwork, witnesses, and sometimes divine approval. Historians still argue whether the church helped protect love by promoting marriage, or smothered it by regulating desire. But there's no denying its power. The church could sanctify a union or shatter it with a sermon. You return home that night heavy, but not defeated. This is just another step, another test. You'll go to her father again, but when you do, he surprises you. He's heard about your work, about your dedication. He asks no questions this time, just one sentence. Keep going. Not quite a blessing, but not a refusal. And in medieval romance, that's practically an engagement ring. You leave feeling taller, not because you've won, because you earned something, respect, maybe even trust. You meet her later, under the pear tree by the road. You tell her everything. She doesn't speak, just takes your hand. No one sees. No one needs to. That silent connection, that shared weight, it's more intimate than any kiss. And suddenly, despite the soot and the sweat and the bruises and the rules, you feel free. You're back in the market again, not because you need more turnips, but because that's where everything happens: trading, gossip, and of course, flirting. Except now, things are different. You've been noticed. Not just by her, not just by her father, not just by your soot-stained friends at the forge bet, by everyone. Your casual stroll past her stall earns you smirks, raised eyebrows, and even a few pointed "whom" sounds from elderly women who seem to run on tea, scorn, and prophecy. So today, your flirting must be covertulated, sophisticated. Adjust your sleeves, smooth your hair, which accomplishes nothing, and try not to trip over a goose as you casually approach the row of apples. She's already there, hands tucked neatly behind her back, eyes scanning the produce like she isn't 100% aware of your approach. You nod, she nods. That's the opening. Nice pears, you say. Her lips twitch. Those are apples. You grin. Even better. Medieval flirting was often a delicate ballet of subtle gestures, since open displays of affection were usually met with scandal, or sermons, or both. So, when you can't say much, you signal. She drops her kerchief. Not on accident. You both know this game. You wait 2 full seconds before picking it up, just long enough to not look too eager. Missed something, you murmur, handing it back. She brushes your fingers as she takes it. Not long enough to be improper. Just enough to say, "I'm here." Quirky fact. Medieval courtship had an entire language of objects. A dropped glove could mean interest. A fan held to the left cheek might signal rejection. A ring worn on a certain finger meant taken, or available, or plague-free, depending on the region. Historians still argue whether this secret language of love was widely understood, or more of a poetic ideal found in courtly romances. Either way, you've picked up just enough to know this is real communication. Later, in a crowded corner of the square, she fans herself gently. It's a warm day, yes, but also a coded gesture. The fan turns once, then rests, then brushes her cheek. You respond by adjusting your belt, which, in the highly unofficial flirt codex of your village, means, "Let's talk behind the cider barrels." You meet behind the barrels 5 minutes later. "Bold," she says. "Barrel rendezvous always." You laugh, together quietly, quickly, because someone will come looking. You speak softly, shoulders angled toward each other, but not too close. The rhythm of this is intimate, like reading a poem aloud, where every word must be chosen with care. "People are watching," she says. "They've always been watching, but now they expect something." This is the tension now, not fear, not longing, but pressure. Everyone seems to be waiting for you to either marry or vanish into shame. There is no middle ground in a village with 4 streets and 1 goat with a gossip addiction. You talk about plans. You talk about timing. You do not talk about love, because that's the one thing you can't say yet. It's too heavy, too real. Like naming a wild animal, you'll scare it off. Instead, you talk about pears, about the baker's terrible singing, about how you both once dreamed of being something else, someone else. She wanted to ride horses properly, not side saddle. You wanted to draw maps, even though you've never left your county. You wonder, briefly, what it would be like to ride away together. No curates, no parents, no village. Just you two, but you say nothing. That's fantasy. And right now, your reality is tied up in shared glances, secret signals, and the hope that no one ruins everything before it begins. The moment ends when a child nearly falls into the cider barrel beside you. You both flinch and laugh and straighten, your posture like 2 very innocent people admiring the structural integrity of wooden vats. She slips away a few seconds later, leaving behind a faint trace of dried lavender and adrenaline. You re-enter the crowd, normal, casual, heart pounding, like a war drum. Later, someone nudges you. You and the baker's girl, eh? She's not the baker's girl. You say, perhaps a little too sharply. They raise an eyebrow. Well, maybe she's your girl. Then, you say nothing. But you smile, because maybe, just maybe, they're right. You're back at the forge when it happens again. Another message. Not a letter. Not a dropped kerchief this time. It's a bundle of herbs tied with red string, left conspicuously on your bench. Tucked inside, between the sprigs of rosemary and yarrow, is a tiny scrap of parchment. A quote. Latin. Carefully written. clearly copied from a book you know she doesn't own. Which means someone helped her. The quote is from a monk, about love. You squint at it, trying to recall your Sunday lessons, before finally asking the blacksmith's wife for help. She translates, chuckling, "Love is a fire that burns even the stone." Your ears go red dot the next time you see her. You thank her awkwardly, earnestly. She just shrugs. Thought it sounded like you. You try to respond with something clever, maybe another quote, but your brain melts into honey. So instead, you offer her a small iron charm you made in secretar, tiny, horseshoe, crooked, ugly, but yours. She doesn't laugh. She slips it into her pouch like it's a ruby. You both know what it means, because now you've crossed into strange territory. Medieval philosophy of love. Believe it or not, monks wrote extensively about this stuff. Celibate, cloistered, and entirely unqualified, and yet they were the medieval equivalent of love columnists, especially in the courts of France and Italy, where the rules of love were codified like traffic laws. One famous monk, Andreas Capellanus, even wrote a guidebook called De Amore, laying out such principles as, marriage is no excuse for not loving, and he who is not jealous cannot love. Yes, it's as problematic as it sounds. Historians still argue whether these rules reflected real life, or were just highbrow fanfiction for bored nobles. But for commoners like you, the rules were simpler and much harder. Love someone. Prove it. With work, with risk, with consistency, and increasingly, with secrecy, because the curate isn't done with you. He's watching. Your meetings become shorter, quieter. You speak less in public, communicate more through notes, gestures, and the occasional eyebrow lift that somehow says, "Meet me behind the stables when the bells toll noon," and still she's the one who pushes you to keep going. "I know the rules," she says, "but rules aren't permanent. People change them. You're not so sure." In a world where change moves slower than molasses in winter, rule-breaking feels like heresy. And yet here you are, both of you standing in a field at dusk, surrounded by fireflies, whispering about Latin quotes and blacksmithing and whether geese have souls. "I sometimes think we're inventing something," she says. You tilt your head. "Like what?" "Like our own kind of love. Not what's in the sermons or the books. Just ours." And she's right, because no monk wrote about a soot-covered apprentice and a cider seller's daughter, passing notes behind hay bales and exchanging wilted herbs as tokens of affection. No scribe penned a ballad for people who can't read music, but hummed their own tune anyway. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval communities held mock courts of love where nobles debated questions like, can true love exist in marriage? Or is it better to love or be loved? The answers were theatrical, often contradictory, and almost always concluded with everyone drinking too much and someone challenging someone else to a duel. You and her. You're skipping the theatrics. Your court is a mossy hill. Your decree is a lopsided horseshoe. Your law. Keep going. But the world doesn't like rebels. One evening, you see your mother and hers talking. Not fighting, but talking, the kind of conversation where eyebrows stay furrowed and hands never leave hips. You don't interrupt. You just observe and worry. When you ask her later what it was about, she smiles faintly. They're planning a meeting. You freeze. A meeting between the families. You feel your stomach roll. She sees it. It's a good thing. Or the end of everything. She shakes her head. We've gotten this far, haven't we? She reaches out, brushes your sleeve. A moment of daring. No one writes Latin quotes and flees halfway through. She adds. You laugh, weakly. You haven't read my handwriting. She leans in, whisper soft. No, but I read your heart. The bell rings in the distance. You part ways again. The world is shifting. Eyes are watching. Words are being exchanged in kitchens and beside hearths. But at the center of it all, two people, quietly building something no monk could predict. The day of the meeting arrives with the kind of quiet tension you feel in your jaw, not your ears. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it, like the village itself has paused its usual gossip, chores, and cat-chasing contests to hold its breath. You wear your best tunic. It's still fraying at the cuffs, and one sleeve is scorched from a forge accident involving an over-enthusiastic chicken, but it's clean. That's what matters. Her family's home smells like something baking bread, probably with a hint of sage. You're seated at the long, creaky table with both sets of parents. Your sister, why is she here? Her older brother, definitely. glaring, and a jug of mead that no one is drinking. Introductions are made, as if everyone hasn't known each other since forever. Then comes the long silence. Then, the talk we've heard of their friendship. Your mother says, very carefully, as if friendship is a live squirrel she's trying to hold still. Her father clears his throat, and we've heard of his work, his new trade, his efforts. This is where you try not to look too proud or too sweaty. Your father adds, he's got plans. We've spoken. He's serious. Everyone nods, gravely, like someone just died. Or worse, someone just fell in love without permission. Then come the terms. No dowry, because neither of you is wealthy enough for one. But there is the question of readiness. Will he have his own place? Someone asks, can she bring in coin? Someone else counters. Then your mother, bless her, curse her. Mother hearses. They're young, but they're stubborn, and they're not stupid. High praise. Then, the moment you least expect, a laugh. Her father, just a short, dry chuckle. They remind me of her mother and me, he says, glancing sideways at his wife, who rolls her eyes, and just like that, the tone shifts. You don't get a celebration, no hugs, no doves flying dramatically across the sky, but you do get agreement, a nod, an all right then, an understanding. Historians still argue whether the lower classes had more emotional freedom in their marriages than the nobles, who were bound by politics. Some evidence suggests peasant families were more flexible, especially if the match helped both sides survive. Others argue even peasant unions were dominated by economy over emotion. What's certain is this: negotiation was part of love. Love needed witnesses. Love needed paperwork. Love needed parents to sign off on your feelings like it was a medieval tax form. But also love could win. Later, you and she walk in silence behind the barn, away from the noise and the veiled smiles. It happened. You say it did. And we're allowed now. She grins. We're acknowledged. Don't get cocky. You stop, face her, and finally, after all the subtle glances, encoded fans, and herb-wrapped love notes, you reach out. She takes your hand. No hiding, no middlemen. Just skin against skin, warm and real and steady. It's the simplest thing, and the bravest. You walk together through the twilight, not needing words. Your shadows stretch behind you, long and tangled. The village lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere, a lute plays badly, probably Roland again. Quirky tidbit. In some medieval traditions, couples would walk around a fire or even jump over one together to symbolize unity. You'd love to do that, but given your luck, you'd trip and set your eyebrows on fire. So instead, you walk through the cold, together, hand in hand, no fire needed. That night, back home, your mother folds laundry beside the hearth. She's good for you, she mutters, not looking up. You blink. Really? She didn't laugh when you tried to make that duck poem work. You smile. She tosses you a blanket. Go sleep. You'll need energy. Love's not the hard part. Keeping it is. And she's right, because now that people approve, now that the path is cleared, it gets harder. Expectations rise. Wedding talk begins. People start treating you like a pair of hens tied together for the harvest fair. But at least now, you don't have to pretend. You see her at the forge, waiting. You walk up. No hiding. She hands you a parcel: bread, cheese, a note. You give her a new horseshoe charm, slightly less crooked than the last. You both smile. This is how medieval love survives. Not through grand gestures or burning letters or fights in moonlight, but through everyday acts, through hands held, chores shared, glances that don't need translation. And now, for the first time since that muddy market day, not hoping anymore. You're building. So now it's official. Or, at least, village official, which is its own kind of binding contract. Signed with nods and reinforced by gossip. People stop whispering about you too. They just start expecting you to show up together, expecting a wedding, expecting you to stop loitering behind barns like hormone-charged deer and finally do things properly. And that means preparation. You're still working the forge, slowly becoming someone who knows the difference between a hinge and a horseshoe. While she's now in charge of her family's market stall every other morning, she sells cider, preserves, and occasionally yells at men who try to haggle too aggressively. It's magnificent, but amidst the normalcy, there's something looming. The talk, the one where you and she sit down to discuss, like two very serious medieval adults, how this wee thing is going to work. You meet under the watchtower again. The same one where you once talked about dreams and bent nails. Now, the mood is heavier, more real. I've saved about 2 silver pieces, you say, and a small pouch of copper. She nods. I've hidden 6 loaves from the bakery. 1 is still edible. You both laugh. Then she looks at you seriously. Do you really want this? It's not a joke. It's not romantic. It's practical, honest, because in the Middle Ages, yes wasn't just a feeling. It was a commitment to survive together, to weather famines, to bury family members, to share a bed, a table, and probably a lice comb. Historians often note that medieval marriages were less about passion and more about partnership. Love might spark the union, but work kept it alive. Chores were shared, crops were planted, and you raised children the same way you raised pigs, awkwardly, hopefully. And with a lot of yelling you take her hand. Yes, you say, not whispered, not poetic, just true. And then, without quite meaning to, you begin to plan. Not just the wedding, which will be small, muddy, and absolutely unforgettable, but the life, where you'll live, how you'll get by, who will handle what. You'll keep working the forge, she'll keep the stall. Maybe, eventually, you'll raise a few animals. You even talk about borrowing a corner of your uncle's land. His thatched shed has been vacant since his ill-fated attempt to train geese for guard duty. She wants space for herbs. You want space for quiet. You both agree. No goats inside. The house, you think that's love, but there's one more hurdle. The priest. You show up at the chapel with your best clothes and a sheepish grin. He peers at you over his spectacles, which magnify his eyes to the size of small potatoes. So, he says, you think you're ready for marriage. You nod. He peers at your hands, still black from the forge. Yes, good, means you work. He peers at your chest, still no armor. No better means you're not an idiot. He sighs, then opens a drawer and pulls out a book. The church has rules, he says, laying it down. You'll need to learn them. He flips it open to a page marked with a pressed violet. There, in dense script, is a list of marriage bans, requirements, blessings, and a phrase that translates roughly to, no marrying cousins, unless you can afford indulgences. 3 readings, he says. 3 Sundays, so the village can object if there's cause. You blink, object. He shrugs. It happens. Jilted lovers, debts, secret betrothals. You and she exchange a glance that says, let's hope none of those apply to us. Quirky tidbit. In some regions, if someone did object, the wedding would be postponed indefinitely or until a priest, parent, or local lord got tired of waiting and declared everyone forgiven. One 13th century record shows a couple waiting 5 years because of a rumor involving a third cousin and a missing pie. You begin the process. Each Sunday your names are read aloud. Be it known that so-and-so, son of so-and-so, wishes to take the hand of what's her name, daughter of. You stand in the back of the chapel, holding your breath, each time waiting for a voice to rise up and ruin everything. No one does. The 3rd Sunday, you both let out a breath so loud it echoes against the stone. And then, you're invited to dinner, not just with one family, with both. Together, in the same room. It's chaos. Her mother insists on cooking for everyone. Your father insists on fixing a chair no one asked him to fix. Your sister brings a pie that may or may not be safe to eat. Her brother tells an inappropriate story involving a cow, a fence, and no survivors. But through it all, you and she just keep smiling at each other, because it's real now. It's happening. And as the sun sets, casting orange light across the wooden beams and steaming bowls of turnip stew, you reach for her hand under the table. She squeezes once, then twice, then smiles. Because this is your language, your own secret code. No monks, no fan signals, no Latin quotes required, just fingers intertwined, and everything ahead. The wedding is a week away, and the entire village knows, not because you told them, but because someone saw your mother buying extra flour, which in medieval terms is basically skywriting wedding incoming. Preparations unfold like a slow, slightly chaotic dance. There's no wedding planner, just a lot of neighbors offering opinions, unsolicited pies, and occasionally livestock. The priest visits your home to inspect the setup. It's humble: a table, a bench, a hearth that mostly works, but he nods and mutters something about adequate virtue containment. You take that as a blessing. Your friends start teasing you with mock solemnity. Soon you'll have to stop being fun, Roland says, adjusting your collar too tightly. Soon I'll have to pay rent with another person. You reply. Your father sharpens a hoe unnecessarily in the corner and adds, and you'll never have a warm blanket too. Yourself again, comforting. Meanwhile, she's busy working with her mother and sister to sew a new shift and find something blue, though the only nearby fabric with color is the one used to patch a leaky roof. She insists it'll wash. The night before the wedding, something unexpected happens. She appears at the forge, not hiding, not whispering, just arriving. It's late. The sky is layered with stars, the air sharp with the promise of morning. She stands near the coals, watching you hammer out a hinge. You stop. Cold night, she says. You smile. Hot forge. She looks around. Tomorrow's a big day. You nod. Then she reaches into her satchel and pulls out something wrapped in linen. She unfolds it slowly, a tiny figurine roughly carved, clumsy, and undeniably you. Bent nose, two big shoulders, tiny charcoal smudge where your hammer hand would be. You laugh. It's perfect. I made it with a paring knife and stubbornness, she says. Then she holds out her hand. You place yours in it. No speeches, no poetry, just that this moment quiet, firelit, full of soot and stars, feels more sacred than anything planned. For tomorrow, quirky fact, in some medieval villages, couples shared symbolic gifts. The night before the wedding, a coin split in half, a woven thread, a carved trinket, a token of troth. They called it. Not valuable in coin, but priceless in sentiment. You walk her back to her door, not touching more than that one shared hand. But the silence is thick with everything that doesn't need saying. That night, you lie awake, not nervous, not afraid, just full of what's about to be, of what's already begun. The morning comes with fog, thick, milky, curling through the village streets like it's trying to bless or confuse everyone in equal measure. You dress slowly, wash your face, comb your hair, step into your boots newly patched. Your sister hands you a flower to pin. Don't drop it, she warns. You only get one. You walk to the chapel with your father at your side. He's quiet, which is his way of saying, I'm proud of you, but also terrified of expressing feelings. The village is gathered. Everyone, even the guy who only leaves his house during eclipses. The pews creak under the weight of gossip and joy. And then, she walks in. No veil, no gold, just a white linen dress, clean and simple, with the blue patch now faded to a hopeful gray stitched into the hem. She glows, even through the fog. Maybe because of it, the priest begins. The words are familiar: God, honor, obedience, plows, virtue, and in bed also, which gets a few chuckles. You say your vows. She says hers. You place the ring, just a smooth band of iron you forged yourself, onto her finger. She gives you a smile that makes your lungs forget how air works. And then, you kiss. Just once, just barely, but it's enough to cause Mrs. Haycroft to faint into a basket of apples. Historians still argue whether the kiss was standard in medieval weddings. Some sources say yes, as a sealing of vows. Others insist it was a later invention. You don't care. Yours just happened, and the world didn't catch fire. The rest of the day is a blur. Bread, meat, pies, music. Roland plays something off-key, but heartfelt. Children run between tables. People toast you with everything from cider to suspiciously fermented turnip water. And you hold her hand the entire time, as if letting go might reset everything. Quirky fact, in some villages, newlyweds had to jump over a broom, be pelted with seeds, or even share a sip of ale in front of everyone to seal the marriage. One town required the groom to lift the bride over the threshold while reciting a prayer backward. You, thankfully, only had to dance awkwardly in a circle while someone's uncle clapped out of rhythm that night. You stand in your new space, together. Your new home, the forge, the stall, the debt, the rain, the long winters. Yes, they're coming. But right now, she unrolls a blanket. You add another log to the fire. You both sit, shoulders touching, and it begins. The life you built, together. Morning light leaks through the gaps in your shutters, casting golden stripes across the floorboards of your new home, a small, crooked place that smells like soot, bread, and the faintest hint of lavender. It's not much, but it's yours and hers. You wake before she does. Not because you're trying to be romantic though, let's be honest. It doesn't hurt, but because the rooster next door is overly ambitious and has decided dawn now starts at almost dawn. You stoke The fire, boil water, and slice some bread. You burn it slightly. She eats it anyway, smiling around the edges. This is good. She lies. You're married now, which means everything has changed, and almost nothing has. You still go to the forge every day. She still runs the market stall twice a week, but now your schedules are synced, like dance steps. You know when she'll be home. She knows when you'll be late. You fall into rhythm, like the steady clink of hammer to anvil. Only now, your evenings are fuller. You sit together, shoulder to shoulder, stringing beans, or mending things, or just listening to the wind whistle outside. Sometimes she reads aloud from a borrowed book slowly, carefully, stumbling through Latin while you pretend to understand. Quirky fact: in many medieval households, reading was a shared task, one person literate, the other listening. It wasn't just educational, it was intimate. Books were precious, time even more so. One evening, you surprise her. You bring her a bowl of stew you made, meat, onions, even herbs from the patch outside. She tastes it, pauses, and then says, "You've added something. Flavor," you say proudly. "Possibly dirt," she counters still. She eats every spoonful. Another night, you catch her humming, a melody you've never heard, low and soothing, like the kind of tune you don't realize is in your bones until it spills out. You don't interrupt, you just listen. And now the village sees you differently. You're not courting. You're not young lovers, you're married folk, which means people start asking you for things. Could you help fix a door? Could she lend a hand with preserves? Could you two watch a child for an hour or 3? You do it all because now you're a unit, a team, a household. Even the priest nods at you differently. Less suspicion, more approval. "You've settled in well," he says once, walking past with a small nod, as if this marriage is a wagon that hasn't lost a wheel yet. But beneath the rhythm, beneath the simplicity, you start to feel it. Wait, because love, real love, has gravity. It's not just candlelight and hand-holding anymore. It's budgeting. It's arguments about whose turn it is to patch the roof. It's trying not to snap when you're exhausted and someone's goat has eaten your laundry line again. Historians sometimes romanticize medieval marriages as either pure hardship or eternal devotion. But most of the time, they were both joy and work, laughter and blisters, a shared fire and a shared silence. You argue for the first time on a Tuesday about garlic. It starts simple, whether you need to buy more or just use dried, but somehow snowballs into a storm of frustration, raised voices, and dramatic yours mostly. You stew for hours, so does she, and then she comes to the forge, hands you a pouch of garlic, says nothing, you nod, say nothing. You walk home together. That night, you sit side by side, and it's quiet but not cold. You're learning that love isn't about never arguing, it's about choosing each other after. One morning, a neighbor knocks. A family in the village has lost their roof in a storm. You're asked to help. Without thinking, you go. When you return, covered in mud and splinters, there's hot food waiting. She's already gone to check on the children. You didn't discuss it. You just knew that this, you realize, is how medieval love lives. Not in declarations, but in gestures. A patch sewn, a meal saved, a word unsaid. Quirky fact: in some parts of rural Europe, newlyweds weren't considered truly married until they completed a full farming season together. Survive planting and harvest. Congratulations, you're built to last. You lie in bed that night, hand in hers. Your room is small. Your roof still leaks when it rains sideways, and the walls creak whenever the wind breathes too hard. But you wouldn't trade it, because here, in this small shared space, is something no poet can quite describe. Not infatuation, not courtly love, not fantasy. But realness. Love, when it finally lands, isn't fireworks. It's a hearth that stays warm. It begins with a letter, not one addressed to Euthos, rarely come, unless it's the blacksmith's bill or an invitation to slaughter pig's butt to her, delivered by a traveling messenger who smells like 3 days of wet sheep and charges by the syllable. The parchment is fine, the seal unbroken. She reads it with her eyebrows, doing that thing half arch, half worry, and when you ask, she says, simply, "It's from my cousin, the one who married into the Baron's household." You nod like you remember. You absolutely do not. "She's inviting us," she says, "to court." You laugh. "To court, like with nobles." She nods. Apparently the Baroness is impressed with the cider recipe, wants to taste the sauce. You blink. We're going to a castle. She grins. We're going to be guests. You look down at your hands calloused, blackened from weeks of work, and try to picture them resting politely on a silk-covered table. It doesn't compute. But a week later, you find yourself on a cart, jostling over uneven roads, dressed in your finest, which is really just your least dash burnt. The castle looms ahead, perched on a hill like it's judging everyone below it. Walls, thick as arrogance, banners flapping in the breeze. You try not to gape, fail miserably. Inside, it's all polished stone and whispered gossip. Servants float like ghosts. Tapestries hang with stories you only half remember from sermons, knights and dragons, saints and sinners, all woven in gold thread. And then, there are the people, the nobles. Silk, perfume, delicate shoes that probably shouldn't touch mud. Everyone smells like rosewater and expectations. They talk in riddles. They flirt with words like weapons. And your wife, she holds her own, calm, poised, laughs at the right moments, speaks little, but when she does, people listen. You fall in love with her again, just watching. But here's where it gets tricky, because courtly love is a whole different beast. Here, marriage is just background noise. People flirt openly, dance closely, exchange poems written in secret code. It's not about honesty, it's about drama, layers of meaning, elegant suffering. One lady hands you a note, written in verse. You squint. Is this about cabbages? It's about yearning. She whispers dramatically. You fold it carefully and promise to treasure it forever, probably as fireplace kindling. Your wife raises an eyebrow. You shrug. Courtly love, historians say, was never meant to be practical. It was entertainment, a performance of longing. Knights devoted themselves to women they could never have affront shouldn't have. Married women, usually, which made everything more noble apparently. But it wasn't all play. People fell hard. There were duels, broken marriages, whispered scandals embroidered into tapestries if they were juicy enough. Quirky tidbit. In 12th century France, a noblewoman supposedly made her knight drink wine from her slipper to prove his love. He caught pneumonia. She wrote a poem. Everyone was thrilled. You watched the court from the corner of a stone hall, your wife beside you, sipping wine and not letting go of your hand. You wonder if anyone notices how unusual that Israel affection among the performance. One of the noblemen leans in, smirks. You two are unusually close. Your wife nods. He actually likes me. You try not to laugh. The nobleman looks mildly offended, then confused. That night, you're given a room with velvet drapes, 2 chairs you're afraid to sit on, and a bed that creaks like it's never known labor. You lie awake, listening to the strange quiet of wealth. Even the wind sounds curated. She turns to you. Do you like it here? You pause. I like the food. Same, but the people. She sighs. Too many masks. You nod. I'd rather wear soot. She shifts closer. I'd rather sell cider to people who don't compose odes about it. You lie there, side by side, and laugh softly until sleep comes. The next morning, before the sun fully rises, you walk the gardens, alone. You need to breathe where the walls aren't watching. You find a statue of a woman, marble, elegant eyes, empty. A plaque reads, "She died for love." You wonder who wrote that. Probably someone who never had to carry firewood or argue about garlic. Because real love doesn't die in gardens. It wakes up early, burns the stew, saves extra bread. Real love sits with you when you've had a bad day and don't know why. Courtly love writes poems. Real love does dishes. You return to the room with a smile. She's already dressed, waiting. "Let's go," she says. "I miss our leaky roof." You ride home together, wind in your face, dirt on your boots, laughter in your bellies. Back to your stall, your forge, your tiny home. Back to love that doesn't need an audience. Your home. The castle's echo has faded from your ears. The velvet cushions left behind, and the smell of smoked sausage in the village square feels like a welcome slap back into reality. You're not meant for silks. You're not meant for slippers full of wine. You're meant for this muddy roads, uneven rooftops, and the sweet stench of a life you've built with your bare, slightly burned hands. You step back into your home, your real home, and it's like the air hugs you. The bed creaks familiarly. The fire crackles like it missed you. And your neighbor's goat immediately tries to eat your laundry again. Back to normal. But something's shifted. Not just in your legs, still sore from castle dancing. In you. because that glimpse into courtly life, it taught you something. Something strange. It taught you that your love, this real, messy, beautiful love, is not lesser than the poems and tapestries and honeyed words of the nobles. It's better, because it's earned, and it keeps earning itself. Every day, you notice it in little things now. The way she leans into you slightly when she's tired. The way you no longer need to ask where the salt is, she moved it. But you already knew. One night, while you're splitting firewood, Roland appears at your door holding a lute and wearing the expression of someone who has very little to lose and even less rhythm. I wrote a song, he announces, about you too. You groan. Do I die in it? Twice, actually. He plays it. It's not great, but it's heartfelt, full of odd rhymes and unnecessary harp interludes. Your wife claps. You wince. The goat bleats in protest. But afterward, the village asks for it. Again, and again. Because even they can see it now. You two are a story, not a fairy tale, a folk tale. The kind passed down because it feels like people, like truth. Historians rarely record these kinds of loves. The quiet ones, the everyday ones. They preserve royal scandals and war romances, but not the baker who walked 6 miles for sugar to surprise his wife. Not the thatcher who sang badly just to hear his husband laugh. But your story. It lives here, in scraped pots, in repaired boots, in shared cider on cold nights. And yes, sometimes, in tavern songs that get all the details hilariously wrong. Quirky tidbit. In some medieval towns, couples became local legends, not because of wealth or beauty, but because of how well they worked together. One village in Italy even crowned a best couple every year at the spring festival. The prize, a whole chicken, and the honor of being very stared at. You and she, well, you're already being stared at, especially when you do things like dance in the rain, or argue over radish prices with unnecessary passion, or spend too long at the well just to talk. One morning, you catch her sitting on the doorstep, weaving a basket, humming. You sit beside her, quiet. I dreamed about you last night, she says. Was I heroic? No, you were trying to milk a bull. You both laugh so hard the basket unravels. That night, after dinner, you bring her something, not flowers, not poems. You bring her a broom handle you carved into a crude walking stick, just in case she ever gets old and wants something ugly but heartfelt. She holds it like a scepter. Will you still love me when I need this? I'll love you more when you do. You meant it as a joke, but you realize it's true, because love isn't just about the now. It's about the later, the days ahead, when your hair goes gray, when your back hurts more, when the fires burn slower but the warmth lingers longer. You're not building a love that needs violins or moonlight. You're building one that lasts through Thursdays, through rainstorms, through arguments about soup. Historians might not write about you, but songs will, whispers will, and she will, in every laugh, every look, every time she sees you trip over your own boots and doesn't say a word, but smiles. You fall asleep beside her that night, with her head on your shoulder, and the sound of firewood cracking like punctuation to a sentence that says, "This is it. This is love." It's been a year. That realization sneaks up on you while you're tying a bundle of kindling together, and she's in the background scolding the cat for eating a candle stub. You stop, blink, and do the mental math. You've been married a year. One whole cycle of planting, harvesting, freezing, and thawing. One whole wheel of festivals, from the spring revel to the winter feast, and somehow, you've survived. You tell her that night. She squints. Are you sure? Pretty sure. What day is it? Thursday. She laughs. Close enough. You don't have a feast. No gold rings. No poetic serenades. You have stew, a decent chunk of cheese, and a blanket not currently occupied by a barn cat. In medieval life, anniversaries weren't always marked with dates. They were marked by moments. Shared weather, ripened fruit, the smell of barley at just the right tilt of the sun. Your memory of the wedding lives more in her smile during the rain than in any date scratched onto a church calendar. You sit together that night, reflecting, quietly, not out loud. She leans on your shoulder. I thought it'd be harder, she says. You look down. It was hard. Oh, I know. I just thought we'd fight more. You grin. We fought about garlic that one time. She smirks. Still think I was right. You don't argue. Not tonight. The year has changed both of you. The little things add up. How you communicate with a glance. How you divide chores without speaking. How she always knows when you need an extra slice of bread without asking. It's not romance like in the stories. It's quieter, deeper, like a river that stopped rushing and simply knows its path. Quirky fact. In parts of rural England and France, couples celebrated anniversaries by exchanging handmade gifts, simple tokens like combs, spoons, or even newly carved prayer beads. It wasn't about extravagance. It was about saying, "I still choose you." So the next morning, you do something. You carve a small pendant from Boengus, a smooth oval with a notch, shaped like a crescent moon. You string it on a bit of worn twine and leave it by her bedside. She doesn't say anything. When she sees it, just puts it on, wears it every day after. And you build a bench. It's lopsided, a little squeaky, but it fits both of you. You place it under the willow tree near the edge of your plot, facing the sunset. Some evenings, you sit there, saying nothing, just existing, watching the light slide across the grass like honey. One day, as you both walk back from the market, you pass by a younger couple newly in love. By the looks of it, he's carrying her basket. She's giggling too loudly. You both smile. "That was us," she says. You glance sideways. You giggled louder. Lies. You nudge her. She doesn't nudge back. She grabs your arm, pulls you close. You didn't need courtship anymore. You need this. She pauses. Do you ever miss it? What? The chase, the mystery, the sneaking around. You think for a moment. I liked the thrill, you say, but I like this piece more. She nods. I like not hiding. You both agree, love should not be an uphill cart ride every single day. Still, once in a while, she sends you a note, folded into your bread, scribbled in charcoal on your lunchcloth. Always absurd. I dreamt you turned into a goose. You were majestic. You snored like a storm last night. I slept better than ever. You're lucky I like soot. You keep every note in a wooden box beneath your side of the bed. One night, she finds it, smiles, shakes her head. You're worse than a monk, she says. Less celibate, though. She laughs so hard the cat bolts from the room, and there it is again. That thing people chase with swords, poems, and tragic songs. Not mystery, not fire, but comfort. The kind of comfort that says, even if the roof leaks and the stew burns and the goat eats your tunic again, you'll still have this, you'll still have each other. 1 year down, a whole lifetime to go. You're woken by the sound of shouting. Not angry shouting, excited shouting. The kind that comes with phrases like twins, and the cow's loose again, and someone get the midwife. You sit up, disoriented. She groans beside you. What is it now? You peek out the window. A cluster of neighbors huddle near the Greaves' house, gesturing wildly, like a medieval weather report gone wrong. Something's clearly happening, and it gets you thinking about family. Not your family, the one that raised you, argued with you, and forced you to carry buckets uphill both ways, but your future family. Because lately, people have started asking, when will there be little ones? You two make such a lovely couple. Any news? You know, I heard onions boost fertility. You're not even sure what that last one means, but it's definitely not helpful. You talk about it. She and you. One fog-drenched evening while snapping peas on the porch. Do you want them? She asks. You pause. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I want 3. Sometimes I want none. She nods. Same. Though I would like someone to help with the laundry eventually. You both laugh, and then fall quiet again. Because this isn't just a preference. In the Middle Ages, this is life and legacy. Having children means survival. It means labor. It means security in your old age. But it also means risk. High risk. Childbirth is dangerous. Childhood is unpredictable. Love doesn't guarantee healthy outcomes. Historians are often sobering about this. Many medieval families lost as many children as they raised. Illness, famine, accident, any one of them could end what began with hope. And still, people tried. Not because they were foolish, but because they were hopeful. Quirky fact. Some expecting couples tied ribbons around trees in spring, hoping for blessings from the spirits of fertility. Others made tiny bread dolls and buried them in gardens to invite healthy births. You and she, thankfully, agree not to bury baked goods. Instead, you simply wait. You let the thought exist without forcing it. You help your neighbors with their newborn. She holds the baby and makes the smallest noise. You notice. You don't mention it, and over the months the subject comes and goes. Sometimes, She jokes about turning the storage shed into a nursery. Sometimes you carve a tiny wooden horse and then wonder why you did. Sometimes you both just lie in bed, staring at the ceiling beams, asking the sky questions you don't say out loud. But your love doesn't wait. It continues, grows, deepens. Whether you have a dozen children or none, it becomes clear that this marriage is not dependent on what might happen. It's built on what already has. One afternoon, she brings home a child. Temporarily, he's no more than 5, missing 2 teeth and half his trousers, with eyes like pond water and a stubborn streak the size of a cathedral. His mother's sick, his father's gone. She says you'll keep him for a few days. You clear space near the hearth. You lend him a shirt. You show him how to shape a nail dot. He shows you how to smear jam on the ceiling. By the 3rd day, he calls your wife auntie. By the 4th, he falls asleep on your shoulder. By the 5th, he goes back home, healthy and grinning. And when the door closes behind him, the house feels oddly quiet. You look at her. She doesn't say anything. Neither do you. But you both feel it. Something shifted. And so you prepare. Not with charts, not with prayers, just with openness. You start saving a little more. You build a stronger latch on the back door. She starts sewing against any things, just in case. And still, nothing happens. Weeks pass. Then months. You begin to wonder. And yet your love never wavers. That's the part that surprises you. Because, in the stories, people love for a reason. Beauty, passion, destiny. But in real life, people just love. Even when the barn leaks. Even when nothing arrives. Even when your neighbor's goat eats your radishes again. You and she sit on your lopsided bench, side by side, hands brushing lightly. And she says, if it's just you and me forever. You glance at her. I wouldn't mind. You smile. I think we'd still have our hands full. She raises an eyebrow. With what? You point toward the horizon, where Roland is currently chasing a chicken through someone's laundry. She sighs. Fair enough. You both laugh until the sun fades, and you realize, whatever comes or doesn't, you've already got everything you need. It's harvest season again, and everything smells like damp earth and celebration. The fields are thick with motion, people, carts, oxen, and the occasional toddler attempting to eat a potato raw. The sun is gold and heavy, the kind that bakes fatigue into your spine and still somehow makes you grateful. This is the time of plenty, of proof that you've survived another cycle. You and she work side by side. As always, you swing a scythe like a practiced arm of the land, and she sorts grain with the ruthless efficiency of someone who can separate wheat from chaff and people from nonsense with a single look. You break for lunch, collapsing onto a bale of hay, sweating and sore. She hands you bread. Not warm, not soft, still perfect. Married life, she says, is mostly bread and backaches, and still better than court life. She snorts. They don't even sweat properly. You both laugh, and she leans her head on your shoulder for just a breath. That's the thing with harvest. It brings you together. Not just as a couple, but as a community. Everyone helps everyone. One person's grain sack is everyone's problem. One broken wheel, everyone lifts. It's unspoken law. In fact, there's a rhythm to this time of year that seeps into your bones. Wake before dawn. Work till dusk. Share a meal. Share a story. Sleep, sore and grateful. You don't talk about love much during this season. You live it. Through action, through presence, through silent glances that say, I see how tired you are. I still think you're magic. Quirky fact. Some villages held harvest love games, light-hearted contests where couples tested their teamwork through races, cooking duels, and even tandem log-splitting. The winners were said to have a year of good fortune, or at least fewer arguments about firewood. You and she don't enter the games. You don't need a prize to prove what you already know. One evening, after the last bundle's been tied and the air smells like dusk and damp wheat, you sit outside your home. She brings out a bucket of water and washes your hands quietly, carefully, as if each callus deserves its own blessing. Do you remember, she says, the first time you talked to me? You smile. I said something about pears. Apples, she corrects. Close enough. You reach for her hand. Do you remember, you ask, the first time you knew? She doesn't answer right away. Then, softly, the first time you walked away and didn't look back until I smiled. You didn't know she noticed, but she always notices. That night, the village throws a feast. Tables are dragged into the square. Torches are lit. There's music, bad and loud, and absolutely wonderful. The air is thick with spice and smoke and the smell of roast, everything. You dance, not well, not gracefully, but with her. And that's the point. The priest joins in. Roland tries to play the lute while spinning. Someone sets fire to a pie. No one cares, because for one glorious night, life is full and bright and slightly chaotic in the best possible way. You and she sneak away just before midnight, bellies, full hands, sticky with honey, hearts light. As you walk home, you ask, if we do have a child someday, what should we name them? She grins, bread, since that's clearly the main theme of our marriage. You both laugh so hard you have to stop walking. She adds, or maybe, something simple, something quiet, like a name that feels like dusk. You pause. You always say the prettiest things. She shrugs. I married a blacksmith. Someone has to keep up the poetry. You kiss her forehead. Soft, quick. The night swallows your footsteps as you walk the last stretch home. At the door she turns to you. Even if the harvest fails someday, you don't let her finish. Then we plant again. She smiles, and together you step inside. The frost comes early this year. It sneaks in overnight, dusting the fields with silver and turning every surface slick and shivery before dawn. You wake to see your breath clouding the air and the window panes patterned like cobwebs spun by icy spiders. Winter is here, and medieval winters, you've learned, are not just a season, they're a trial. You double layer your tunic. She lines the hearth with fresh ash to keep the coals alive overnight. You both start speaking in half sentences that translate roughly. To close that door, use the good blanket. And did you feed the goat? Or is it just yelling for fun again? And yet, this is when love shows its truest face. Because love in the winter doesn't come with roses or poems or stolen glances across a market square. It comes with cracked hands reaching for the same kettle, with feet tangled beneath shared furs, with silence so familiar you don't even realize you haven't spoken in an hour because the presence is enough. You work less now the forge slows, the market thins. Most days your biggest task is staying warm, staying fed, staying well, and that's not easy. Food is tighter, roots sprout and spoil. Your neighbor's pig goes missing. Turns out it was inside the barn the whole time, sleeping on someone's cloak like a lord. You help out where you can. Chop wood for the widow down the lane. Share stew with the family who lost their grain sacks in a flood. She knits mittens for every child under the age of 7, including one for a boy who swears he's 8. And when the days grow too short and the nights too cold, you both do the one thing that never fails. You tell stories. Every evening, like a sacred ritual, you curl up by the hearth and begin. Some are real, some are suspiciously embellished. You tell her about the time you chased Roland across 3 fields because he swore he saw a ghost with turnips for eyes. She tells you about the night she snuck cider into church and nearly got exorcised when she hiccuped during a hymn. Quirky fact: in the long, cold months, storytelling wasn't just entertainment, it was survival. It passed the time, preserved memory, and bound families together. Some stories weren't told to amuse, but to remind people of joy, of lineage, of who they were before the freeze. One night, she asks you to tell her the story of you two. From the beginning, you raise an eyebrow. You were there. I want to hear it anyway. So you start. You tell her about the day you saw her by the turnips, about your incredibly smooth line, about how nervous you were that first time you saw her laugh. She corrects you at least 5 times. No, I was by the apples. No, you said, do you like dirt vegetables? No, the first time we touched hands was behind the ale cart, not the cider barrel. You both laugh until the fire dies to embers. She rests her head on your chest. You kiss her forehead. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, the silence glows. And here's what no ballad ever tells you. This is the love that lasts. The love that doesn't need fanfare or flame. The love that survives boredom, blizzards, and broken shoes. The love that understands that "are you warm enough?" can be the most romantic sentence ever spoken. One morning, after a particularly fierce night of wind, you wake to find snow has drifted halfway up your door. You don't curse it. You don't fight it. You just boil water. Make her tea. Slip her mittens on while she pretends not to notice. Later that day, she writes you a note slid under your plate like a secret. It reads, "If this house ever caves in, we'll just build another. I don't care where we live, as long as it's with you. You fold it. Place it in your box of notes. You'll read it again next year and the year after, because winter always returns. But so does your love, stronger, warmer, still holding hands. In the cold, spring doesn't arrive, erupts. One day the world is cold, grey, stiff. The next, birds are shouting in every tree. The mud is back in all its glorious stickiness, and the goat is headbutting the door like it's personally offended by the delay in clover. You open the shutters. Fresh air rushes in, so clean it almost feels rude. She sneezes once and smiles. It's here, she says. Finally, you both step outside together. The world is soggy, soft, and alive. And you realize you've made it through another winter. Together. Their single quotes are lightness now, a quickness in your step. You plant seeds in the soil, but you're also planting something deeper, something between you that's stronger for the storms. It's weathered. Your neighbors are out too, cleaning, hammering, arguing about fence lines like it's a competitive sport. Children chase chickens. Roland, for reasons no one understands, is trying to teach a squirrel to sit on his shoulder. And you and she, you build a fence. Not for protection, not because of danger, just because your old one finally collapsed under the weight of age and too much leaning. She insists on painting the gate. You ask, with what paint is rare, expensive? She shrugs. Berry juice or beet water, anything red. So now your gate has one beautifully blotchy heart in the center, and everyone in the village knows exactly who lives here. You don't mind. Spring brings more than sunshine. It brings questions. People start asking again about the next stage. Any children yet? Still just the two of you. You don't answer. Not really. You just smile. Because lately, you and she have stopped asking too. Not out of sadness but peace. Some loves grow outward into families, into branches. Others grow inward, stronger, deeper, like roots curling around each other beneath the soil. You've stopped waiting for what might be. You've started enjoying what is. One afternoon, she brings home a basket of herbs. Thought we might start a real garden, she says. You look around your little patch of land. It's nothing impressive, some rocky soil, a few weeds that refuse to die, a persistent mole who's too clever for traps. But you nod, and together, you dig, you till, you plant, you argue about spacing. She's right, of course. And slowly the garden becomes a kind of mirror. It's not perfect, but it's alive, it's work, and it's yours. Quirky fact. In many medieval households, the garden wasn't just for food, it was symbolic. Herbs for healing, flowers for joy, plants grown not just for sustenance, but for meaning. Rosemary for memory, lavender for love, sage for wisdom. She plants all three. You carve a sign that just says ours. Later, you sit on the bench beneath the willow, watching the breeze tug at the young plants. You know, she says, if we ever do have a child, I hope they learn to love this. You glance at her, the garden, the growing. You smile, even if they grow sideways. She grins, especially then. That night, she reads by firelight some borrowed book from the chapel, full of saints and strange footnotes. You mend your boots. You don't talk. You don't need to. And suddenly you realize, this is the life you once prayed for. Not at an altar, not aloud, but in the quiet way people wish for things when they stare at stars they'll never touch. You'd wished for peace, and it came in the form of someone who stole your heart by the turnips, danced badly at festivals, and still snores gently beside you after every long day. You look at her now, older, maybe tired, a bit grayer around the temples, and more beautiful than ever. Not the beauty of mystery, the beauty of familiarity, of knowing you. Reach for her hand. She takes it without looking up, and everything feels new again, just like spring. The letter arrives, wrapped in oilskin and bound with twine, crude, unceremonious, and marked with a seal you don't recognize. You find it at the market stall while she's measuring out grain for an elderly man with no remaining teeth, and far too many opinions about carrot sizes. You break the seal. You read it once, then again, then your breath catches, because the letter is from him, your brother. You haven't heard from him in years, not since he left, headed south with a caravan, chasing silver or adventure or whatever ghosts live beyond the horizon. And now, apparently, he's coming home. He's coming back, you say. She raises an eyebrow. Who? You just hand her the letter. That night, you sit together on the bench, passing it back and forth. rereading the words like they might change. He'll arrive within the week, wants to visit, meet her, see your life, and suddenly you're nervous. Not because you have anything to hide, but because you've built something, and you're not sure if he'll understand it. This quiet life, this grounded love, this joy, that doesn't shout. You remember the way he laughed at small towns, called them places where ambition goes to nap. You wonder what he'll say about a garden patch and a soot-streaked blacksmith when he arrives. You know it immediately, because he brings dust and noise and the smell of long roads. He's taller than you remember, thinner, his beard is streaked with something between wisdom and exhaustion. And when he sees you, he smiles like a man who never stopped being your brother. You embrace, you catch up, you eat bread and drink cider, and reminisce about the time you both tried to build a glider from cart, wheels and an old sheet. He meets her, and something shifts, because instead of recoiling from your small life, he leans into it. He helps fix the garden gate. He compliments her cooking with more sincerity than flair. He walks through the fields at dusk, quietly. One night, you sit beside him, 2 mugs between you, the stars sharp and cold overhead. You look different, he says. How still you, just settled. He smiles, like a house that's been lived in long enough to feel like home. You nod. That's exactly what it is. He doesn't mock it. He doesn't tease. He just sips, exhales, and says, I was wrong, you know. About what? That love had to be big to be real. Quirky fact. In some regions of medieval Europe, returning family members were honored with a small feast or shared labor project, repairing a roof, rebuilding a barn. The idea was simple. Welcome them back by working beside them. Words fade, deeds remain. So you and your brother rebuild the fence line, not because it needs it, but because it gives your hands something to do while your hearts remember how to beat. Together again, she watches from the garden, amused. You two look ridiculous, she says. Arms crossed. You both shrug. We always did, you say. Later, your brother turns to you. She's good for you. You nod. She's everything. He tilts his head. And if you lost it all tomorrow, the house, the stall, the work, you think for a moment, then we'd rebuild. Just like the fence. He stays for a few more days. Sleeps on the floor by the hearth. Tells stories that make you laugh so hard your ribs ache. Then one morning, he's gone again. A note left behind. Keep living this small, perfect life. I'll come back when I need to remember what love looks like. You show it to her. She folds it and tucks it between the pages of her herb journal, where it smells faintly of rosemary and dried thyme. That evening, you sit on your bench, her head on your shoulder, and you realize something. Your love isn't just changing. It's rippling, reaching, teaching even. The ones who ran away from stillness are beginning to understand its strength, and that is enough. One afternoon you wake 2 bells, not church bells, not warning bells, wedding bells. You sit up groggily, and she peeks her head in from the garden, dirt on her nose and a daisy tucked behind her ear. They're getting married today, she says. You blink. Who? Ellie and Tom. Finally, you grin. Those two have been circling each other for years, more off than on, more arguments than apples shared. But now, somehow, it's happening. You grab your boots, wipe your face, and before long, you're both walking toward the chapel, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand. Your own wedding years behind you, but not forgotten. The whole village is out, even the people who never leave their homes unless someone dies or a cow explodes. There's ribbon on everything, even the goats. Roland's trying to tune a lute again. You really wish he wouldn't. You squeeze her hand. I'm glad we're just attending this time, you say. She chuckles. You say that every time we pass a wedding, you lean closer. Still true. There's something beautiful about watching someone else say their vows, not because you want to relive it, but because it reminds you how far you've come. The awkwardness, the nerves, the sense that your heart might burst out of your chest mid-ceremony. And now, your heart still swells, but it knows how to stay put. You watch them, the young couple, as they fumble through their words, as Tom drops the ring, as Ellie beams like the sun itself. You remember that feeling, that wonder, that impossible hope, and you realize you still have it. Quirky fact. Some medieval weddings weren't held in churches at all. They happened at doorways, in front of neighbors, with the village as witnesses. The idea was that marriage was a public promise, not just a religious one. You don't just marry each other, you marry into a community, and the community does not disappoint. After the ceremony, the feast begins. Tables are dragged out. Jugs appear from nowhere. Someone starts a conga line, even though no one knows what that is. You and she join in, laughing until your stomach hurts. She spins under your arm, graceful as always. You trip over a chicken dot again. At one point, you find yourselves watching from the edge. Bread in hand, smiling, she nudges you. We're the old married couple now. You raise an eyebrow. Speak for yourself. I'm spry. You snore. I sing in my sleep. She grins, like a bear with a cold. You can't help it, you laugh, loud and full and unashamed. And when she leans into you, head resting against your chest, you feel the world quiet down again. That night, after the dancing ends and the stars are scattered thick across the sky, like breadcrumbs for dreamers, you and she walk home. You say little, you don't need to, but when you reach your front door, she stops, turns. Would you marry me again? She asks. You pretend to think. Are the goats still part of the package? She smacks your shoulder. Then you take her hands, and you look at her really. Look into those eyes that once smiled over apples, that once scowled over garlic, that have seen every season of you, and stayed. In a heartbeat, you say. She leans in. You kiss her, right there, right outside your door, like a fool in love, because you are still, always later. As you lie in bed, you hear the faint echo of laughter from the village. The wedding's still going. The stories are being told. And somewhere out there, someone is starting what you've been living. You smile in the dark, because now, your love isn't just a beginning. It's a beacon, a light that says, this is what it can look like. Real, lasting, rooted. The next few months pass like petals caught in a warm breeze, slow, weightless, and somehow gone before you're ready. The garden grows full again. The bees return. The goat, now semi-retired, still causes minor emotional distress by escaping, weekly and eating laundry. But one day, something different arrives. Not a letter this time. A visitor, a girl 16, maybe 17, shows up at your gate. Cloak too big, boots too thin, eyes far too old for her age. She carries nothing but a sack and a letter from someone you helped years ago. She said you might take me in. The girl says, eyes darting to your wife, to your hands, to the humble house behind you. You don't hesitate. You open the door. Her name is Mara. Her story spills out slowly, pieces of an unfair world. Lost family, distant relatives who offered more fists than food. But she's strong, smart, tough in the way people are when they've had to grow up in sharp soil. You give her the cot by the fire. She insists on helping, immediately hauling water, feeding animals, cleaning tools. She's stubborn, efficient, and suspicious of anything too kind. She doesn't trust us yet. Your wife says one night, she doesn't trust safe yet. You reply. And you remember what it felt like. That first season when everything was new, uncertain. The part of love no one writes poems about. The earning. You begin again. With her. Not as parents, not yet, but as something steady. Something that says, you're safe now. At first, she keeps to herself. Meals are silent. Chores are fast. She thanks you like someone reciting lines at confession. But slowly, she softens. One evening, you catch her singing while washing the dishes, off-key, barely audible, but real. Your wife hears too. She doesn't mention it. Later, Mara brings in herbs from the garden and begins hanging them to dry without being asked. One day, she brings you a repaired glove, stitched, messily, but with care. This was torn. She mumbles. Not anymore, you say. Quirky fact. In many medieval villages, taking in a young person was a community duty, sometimes as apprentices, sometimes as wards, sometimes as unofficial family. These arrangements weren't just charity, they were lineage. Love passed sideways, not just down. Your house adapts, becomes 3 instead of 2. You add another chair to the bench. You tell one extra story at night. Mara listens. At first from the corner, then the floor. Then, one evening, sitting between you both, she doesn't say much, but she stays. The townsfolk raise eyebrows. Some whisper. One neighbor mutters, charity is for saints. Your wife answers calmly, then I suppose we'll just have to act like saints. You, on the other hand, respond by fixing the neighbor's fence and leaving a basket of carrots on her doorstep. Petty but wholesome, and you notice something unexpected. Mara reminds you of you. That hungry gaze, that hesitation before reaching for warmth, that guarded hope, and suddenly you realize this girl doesn't just need safety, she needs love. Not The romantic kind, not the sappy kind, but the kind that wakes her with hot tea, that reminds her her voice matters, that teaches her to shape iron with her own hands. You teach her to forge small things. She takes to it like breath. Her arms aren't strong, but her will is. Her first horseshoe is lopsided. You hang it anyway. Your wife teaches her to knead dough. Mara grumbles about sticky fingers, but smiles when the bread rises. Your home begins to echo. Again, laughter, footsteps. The sound of someone sweeping without being asked. One evening, after dinner, she holds up a burnt spoon and says, "So, we pretend this was intentional." Yes. You both cheer. And for the first time, she laughs so loud, the walls seem to shift. Later, as she sleeps by the fire, your wife whispers, "We didn't plan this." You shake your head. The best things, we never do. Because real lovers, rarely what you expect. Sometimes it's a glance at the market. Sometimes it's a marriage. And sometimes it's a girl with a threadbare cloak and more spirit than she knows what to do with. You look at her sleeping and you think, we were once just two. Now, you're three, and in a world as uncertain as this, that is nothing short of a miracle. Mara stays, not as a guest anymore, and not as a passing kindness. She becomes part of the rhythm. One day, she refers to the goat as our goat, and you and your wife exchange a glance that says more than 1,000 church blessings. The seasons shift again. Autumn now, the air brisk and flavored with smoke. The harvest this year is modest, but steady. Enough is plenty when shared. And Mara, she thrives. She laughs more, works harder, sleeps longer, still refuses to wear mittens, no matter how cold it gets. You teach her to fix a hinge properly. Your wife teaches her to sew a hem that doesn't unravel after 2 hours. Mara insists on cooking one evening and manages to turn a perfectly innocent stew into something that tastes like betrayal and regret. She's furious. You eat every bite. "It's terrible," she says. "I've had worse." You lie. She smirks. When? Don't ask. The three of you become a unit, not always graceful, not without friction, but solid. One evening, at the harvest festival, someone asks Mara who she's living with now. She replies, simply, "My family." You overhear, and you nearly drop the pie you're holding. You look over at your wife. She's heard it too. She doesn't cry, not exactly, but her eyes shine in the torchlight. You take her hand, and for a long moment, the noise around you fiddles. The shouting children, the laughter fades into something soft and still. You've built this, without meaning to. Without blueprint, without guarantee, just two people who chose each other, and chose again, and chose her. Quirky fact, in some medieval villages, unofficial adoptions like this were commemorated with symbolic acts, new pair of shoes, a place set at the table, or even a simple public introduction at market. It wasn't law, but it was truth. You carve Mara her own seat, a small stool, just her size, with a rough flower pattern burned into the side. When you present it to her, she tries to roll her eyes. Fails, then sits on it proudly. Every meal, she starts leaving you notes now, scribbled on scraps, stuffed into your apron. You overcooked the bread. Again. The goat is plotting something. "I fixed your hammer grip." "You're welcome." You keep them all. She keeps your old bent horseshoe, hangs it over her bed like a medal. One chilly night, the three of you huddle around the fire. No one speaks. The room glows orange and gold, and you sit in the warmth of this strange, perfect little household. Mara looks up. "Did you two ever think you'd end up like this?" You and your wife look at each other. She says, "Absolutely not." You say, "Maybe," secretly, "Yes." She rolls her eyes. "You're both insufferable." Then adds, after a beat, "But I'm keeping you." You grin. Not sure that's how adoption works. It is now. Later, as you tuck another log into the hearth and listen to the faint crackle of settling embers, your wife murmurs, "She's going to change the world." You nod. She already changed ours. And that's the thing about real love. It doesn't always start with a kiss. Sometimes it starts with a burnt spoon, a mended cloak, and someone who walks into your life at just the right time. Sometimes it starts when you think everything's already settled, and then it grows. Not because you planned it, but because your heart had space. And one day, without warning, that space becomes home. The day begins with thunder, not a gentle rumble, but a full-throated sky roar. that shakes your teeth and sends chickens into existential spirals. The storm breaks fast, sheets of rain, wind that pulls shingles like petals from a flower, mud everywhere. You huddle indoors, the three of you. The goat refuses to cooperate, as usual. Mara tries to hold the shutters shut with one hand, while balancing a pot of stew with the other. Should we be concerned about the ceiling? She shouts over the howl. You glance up. There's a small drip, then a bigger one, then a splosh. Concerned? No, you reply, resigned. Yes. You grab a bucket. She grabs another. Your wife starts placing towels with the tactical precision of a general. It's not elegant, but it works. Sort of. For hours, the storm rages. Outside, trees bow. Inside, laughter echoes, because what else can you do? Eventually, the rain eases. The world softens. The three of you sit around the table, soggy but triumphant, and that's when Mara brings it out. A bundle of parchment, her writing, not poetry, not letters, songs. You raise an eyebrow. Since when? She shrugs. Since always. I just never showed anyone. Your wife opens one, reads silently, smiles, then reads aloud, and your heart aches a little because it's about you, not by name, but by rhythm, by warmth, by a quiet man who builds more than he knows. You blink a few times, just in case something got in your eye. You wrote this. You say. She nods. There's more. And so she sings, there, by candlelight, with thunder rolling faintly in the distance. Mara sings the story of your household, of the apples, the forge, the garlic argument, the goats, the love. Your love preserved in lyrics. Quirky fact. In many medieval villages, local bards composed songs about ordinary people, sometimes for coin, sometimes for memory. A couple who endured hardship, or showed kindness, or simply lived beautifully, might find themselves turned into melody. Tonight, that's you. Later, as the rain drips its last, and the world outside glistens like glass, your wife leans over and whispers, she turned us into a song. You nod, too full to speak, because you know songs last. They pass from mouth to mouth, town to town. They outlive buildings, outlast arguments, travel farther than footsteps. You've built a home. Now you've become story. The next market day, Mara sings it again, this time outside, in front of neighbors. Her voice cracks. She forgets a verse. Roland tries to harmonize and gets banished. But still, the people listen, and when it ends, they clap. Not politely, genuinely, afterward. A woman from the next village over pulls you aside. That girl, she says. She's got something. You nod. She is something. The next day, Mara gets a request. Someone wants her to write a song for their family. She grumbles. I'm not a bard. Your wife smirks. You're becoming one. And slowly, it happens. She starts performing at festivals. She starts being known. And every time she sings your song, your love, she changes it just a little, adds new verses, updates the chorus, keeps it alive. One day, years later, a traveling merchant stops by your forge. He hums a tune as he waits for a hinge to be repaired. You freeze. Where did you hear that? Oh, some girl in a different village said it was about a couple who met over apples. Or maybe pears. You smile, because that means it's out there. Now, your love, moving, spreading, living on, not carved in stone but sung. You've grown used to people knocking on your door, neighbors asking for help with tools, travelers needing directions, children selling flowers or weeds they claim are flowers for a coin and a smile. But one morning, the knock comes with a scroll, stamped, sealed, official. You squint at the rider. What's this? Message from the Lord Steward. He replies, you're summoned. Your wife leans out from the kitchen. Are we in trouble? The rider shrugs. If you are, at least it's fancy trouble. You break the seal and read. It's not trouble, it's invitation. The Lord of the region is hosting a mid-year gathering for citizens of note. That's the actual phrase. Citizens of note. You, apparently, are one now. You read it twice, then hold it out to your wife and Mara, like it might disappear. If you blink too hard, they want us there. You say. Mara, now slightly taller and slightly more confident than even she realizes, nods. Well, obviously. Why? She grins. Because we're a story. And so, a week later, you ride. This time, not to court as strangers, but as yourselves. You arrive at the manor, a smaller one than before, grander than most homes, but not so intimidated and are shown to a gathering in the hall. Food, laughter, musicians, faces both familiar and new. You see people from neighboring villages, craftsmen, farmers, midwives, weavers, and in the center of it all, a nobleman who's smiling. This isn't about politics, it's about recognition. He calls for silence, makes a speech about pillars of the community, about living examples of perseverance and unity. And then he says your name, followed by your wife's. Then Mara's. You freeze. He gestures, and slowly, the three of you walk forward. He hands you a small token, nothing extravagant, a carved wooden pin, shaped like a tree. For what you've built, he says, not with stone, with heart. You don't know what to say. Luckily, Mara bows, says thank you, and drags you two back to your seats. Are we noble now? You whisper, absolutely not. Your wife replies, good. That night, over dinner, people ask about your story, not just the love story, the whole thing. The village, the garden, the girl who became your daughter without needing blood to prove it. You tell it simply, no flair, no drama, just truth, and people listen. Because here, among threads of velvet and carved bread loaves and carefully combed hair, your story means something. Not because it's loud, because it lasted. Quirky fact, in medieval Europe, it wasn't uncommon for local lords to honor citizens, not with titles, but with tokens. A carved piece of wood, a sash, a mention in the steward's ledger. These acknowledgments were small, but powerful. They made people feel seen. You return home with no riches, just the pin, and something more important. Affirmation. You're not famous, you're not legendary, but you mattered, and not because you won battles, because you built a life. Mara hangs the pin by the door. Your wife starts using it to weigh down recipe scrolls. You just keep doing what you've always done, chopping wood, fixing hinges, remembering birthdays, kissing her cheek when no one's looking, because this quiet, persistent, stubborn love isn't done, not yet. One evening, sitting by the hearth, Mara says, you know, someday people are going to say, I want a love like theirs. You shake your head. They should want their own. Sure, she says, but yours is a good one to start from. You smile. She's not wrong, because it's not just a love story anymore, it's a legacy. The sun lingers longer these days. You notice it not just in the shadows, but in the way the air hangs, soft and golden. Like the world itself is taking a deep breath and settling into comfort. Mara's out back, humming your song, no less while turning over the garden beds. She sings slightly off-key but confidently. Her sleeves are rolled up, her hands are dirt-streaked, her grin's the kind that doesn't need a reason. You glance at your wife. She's shelling peas by the window, rhythmically, like it's a meditation. Something inside you whispers, this is the moment. Not dramatic, not storybook, but perfect. You step outside. Mara, you call. She turns, and you hold up a thin roll of parchment, tied with a ribbon, pressed and neat. Her brow furrows. What's that? A letter. For you. She dries her hands, unties it, reads the first few lines. Then again, silence. What is this? She asks. Softer now. You smile. It's our gift, our adoption official income paper. We spoke to the local cleric. The steward signed it yesterday. She stares at the parchment, then at you, then at your wife. But I already am your daughter. Your wife crosses the yard, tucks a strand of hair behind Mara's ear. You've been that since the day you argued with the goat on our behalf, she says. Mara laughs, then chokes, then just wraps her arms around both of you, wordlessly. Right there, under the budding pear tree, you feel something shift. This isn't just your story anymore, it's hers too. Quirky fact. Legal adoption, in the formal sense, was rare in medieval times, but symbolic adoption and inheritance arrangements were made. Some families adopted heirs, apprentices, or even spiritual children through oaths, ceremonies, or signed agreements, especially if no biological children existed. And while your household started as two and became three through necessity and love, this gesture cements it. Later, you light candles, not for prayer, for celebration. You cook Mara's favorite meal, bread, thick with herbs, cheese so sharp it could duel, and stew with just the right amount of pepper. Your wife brings out a new tunic and stitched, with a pattern of climbing ivy embroidered. Around the hem. You present Mara with a tool belt. For her carved initials on the side. She runs her hand over the leather, misty-eyed. I don't deserve this, she says quietly. You don't earn family. You reply, you build it. She sits between you at the table. 3 bowls, 3 mugs, 3 souls, intertwined not by blood but by presence, by showing up, by staying. That night, after the dishes are done and the fire is low, you step outside alone. The stars are thick like seeds scattered across the dark soil of the sky. You whisper a small prayer, not to any saint in particular, just to the universe. Thank you, you say, for letting me have this. The door, creks. It's Mara. She steps beside you, shivering slightly. You drape your cloak over her shoulders. Hey, she says. Hey, she looks up. Do you ever miss the days before all this? You think, smile. I miss them the way I miss the smell of apples in winter. Nice to remember, nicer to know it led to now. She nods. Me too. And you realize this moment, simple as it is, would have been unimaginable to your younger self. That person who thought love was just about shared glances and festivals. You were wrong. Love is this, showing up, signing papers, passing cloaks to cold shoulders, without being asked. It's giving someone a name and meaning it, and it's whispering into the stars with a full heart and calloused hands. You wake to birdsong, the kind that trickles through cracked windows and dances across your skin like warm sunlight. Spring again, everything beginning again. The world smells like thawed earth and the promise of flowers. You roll over and see her, your wife, hair a little grayer now, cheek tucked into her arm, breathing slow and steady. She's always been a peaceful sleeper, the kind who could rest through a thunderclap and still wake up with the energy of someone twice as young. You dress quietly. Let her sleep. Out in the garden, Mara's already awake. She's hammering something small on the makeshift anvil behind the shed. Sparks dance. She's humming again. You nod to her, and she grins, eyes alight with that unstoppable kind of joy only young people and very old souls know how to feel in springtime. You move together like a well-practiced song, her handing you nails, you checking the fencing, a gentle rhythm built over seasons and storms and Sunday dinners. She's grown into herself now, not just tall but sure. Her eyes are brighter, her posture straight. She knows who she is. And she stays. Even now, as suitors begin to appear. Oh, yes, one by one, they show up. Awkward, stammering, all elbows and too much cologne. One brought a chicken as a gift. A live chicken. You keep a straight face. Your wife does not. Be kind, she whispers. You were once just as foolish. You smirk. Yes, but I never brought poultry to flirt. Mara endures it all with grace. She listens. She smiles. But you know her. None have lit the right spark yet, and that's okay, because she has time, and she has you. Quirky fact. In many medieval households, fathers or father figures played key roles in courtship, not just as protectors, but as guides. Daughters often turned to them not just for permission, but for perspective. A good match was less about wealth, more about shared work, respect, and rarely spoken aloud. Gentleness. One evening, she asks you, what made you know it was her? You glance inside. Your wife is by the fire, darning socks, tongue tucked, in concentration like always. I didn't know at first, you say, not until I saw her love the ordinary. Mara tilts her head. What do you mean? She didn't chase stories, she built them. One meal, one fence post, one laugh at a time. It was never about big gestures, it was about presence. Mara nods. And doesn't say anything else. But that night, she carves something small, pendant in the shape of an apple, split in two. One half she keeps, one she hangs by your workbench. You never ask her why. You already know. Time passes, seasons blur, and slowly, Mara becomes known not just in your village, but across several. She writes songs, mends tools, once stitched up a wounded hunter better than the local healer. He thanked her with a goat. You're up to 4 goats now. One evening, as you all sit around the fire, your wife rests her head on your shoulder. Mara looks up from her whittling. I think I want to stay, she says, here, for good. You smile. You already knew. She could have left, could have chased some story in a city, some coin in a market, some name not tied to yours. But she didn't. She chose this, and that's the miracle of it, isn't it? That real love isn't earned in lightning, it's earned in choice, day after day, season after season. Frost, bloom, drought, harvest, and when someone stays not out of duty, but devotion, that's how you know it's real. You squeeze your wife's hand, and in the quiet flicker of the hearth, with goat snores drifting in from the stable, you realize you didn't just build a life, you built a legacy. The letter arrives on a breeze tucked into the saddlebag of a passing merchant, wrapped in waxed linen and smelling faintly of ink and mint. You open it with curiosity, not urgency. It's from the Abbey. They want to record stories, local histories, oral legends, living memories. There's a scribe passing through in 2 weeks. They've heard of you, of her, of Mara. The letter says, "We hope to preserve your story." Your wife reads it once and hums. "They want the song," she says. Mara grins. "They're going to be very disappointed when they meet you." You glance up. "Me, you're not exactly poetic," she teases. You raise an eyebrow. "And yet, I raised a bard." She shrugs. "We all make mistakes." You laugh, but you also start remembering, not just the highlights, the milestones, but the little things. The first time she burned garlic, the time you fought over a blanket, and both ended up on the floor. The first spring when all three of you planted peas side by side. These moments, these soft, forgettable, irreplaceable moments are your poem. You decide to write your own version before the scribe arrives, not because you want your voice in the record, but because you want to remember it your way. You sit down with parchment and ink and begin, not at the beginning, but at the feeling. How love snuck up on you, how home became a person, not a place, how the goats ruined almost everything, but you'd still invite them back. Mara catches you writing and snatches the scroll. She reads it. She doesn't tease. She just folds it, presses it to her chest, and whispers, "This is beautiful." You blink. You don't think it's too plain. She shakes her head. "It's the truth. Truth is never plain. It's brave." Quirky fact. Many medieval monasteries and abbeys kept chronicles, some meticulously factual, others deeply personal, mixing genealogy with local tales and superstitions. A family's written story was often the only legacy that survived generations. The day the scribe arrives, she's younger than expected. Quill behind her ear, eyes sharp, and fingers ink-stained. She listens. She really listens. You talk. Your wife talks. Mara shares part of her song. You tell your part of the story haltingly at first, then with growing warmth by the end. The scribe is smiling. "I've heard hundreds of stories," she says, "but this one feels lived." She sketches your house, copies a verse from Mara's song, even asks about the goat. "He's a menace." You say an icon. Mara counters. Both true. Before she leaves, the scribe hands you a copy, just one. It's rough, just parchment and string, but it holds your names, your words, your legacy. You place it on a shelf by the fire, and that night, as you drink tea with your feet in your wife's lap, you think about time. The hours in a day, but the weight of a life. How many days stack up, how many stories never get told, and how lucky you are truly to have told yours, not through castles or conquests, but through bread, through laughter, through staying. You look around your home, this patchwork quilt of seasons and second chances, and feel something ancient rise in your chest. Not pride, not joy. Peace. That's the reward of love that lasts. It doesn't shout. It settles. Like dust on a windowsill, like firelight on tired eyes, like a song sung softly that no one forgets. The days grow shorter again. Not cold, yet just tinged. The wind carries a crisper edge. The leaves begin their slow retreat from green to gold, as if the world itself is preparing to exhale. You're slower now, not weak, just measured. Your steps are thoughtful. Your muscles remember years of labor, but they now ask politely before lifting anything heavier than a sack of apples. Your wife's hair has gone silver at the temples. She still shells peas faster than anyone, still makes the best stew in the county, still mutters poetic insults when the bread doesn't rise. You love her more than ever, more than logic, more than yesterday. And Mara, she's becoming something incredible. People call her bard, smith, healer, even teacher, but you still just call her Mara. One evening, she sits with you by the fire, parchment in her lap, ink-stained fingers tapping the wood. "I've been asked to leave," she says. You flinch. "Not leave," she clarifies. "Travel, share the songs, tell stories in villages that don't know we exist." You swallow. You want to go. She doesn't answer right away. Then, I want to carry us, not run from us. You stare into the fire for a long time, and then, you say, take the story. She exhales. You continue. Take the apple, take the garlic fights, take the goats, if you must. But don't forget the quiet. She smiles. And for the next week, she prepares a new cloak, fresh parchment, an amulet you carved, the apple halves reunited as one, a small pouch of herbs from your wife, a note neither of you let her read yet. And then, the day arrives. The three of you stand in the lane. She adjusts her pack. The village gathers behind you. They know what this is. They've seen it before. Only this time she is the one leaving. She hugs you both tightly, and then she sings, just a verse, just enough, the song you helped create, the song that is you, and then she walks away, humming. Not alone, never alone, because she carries you. She turns once, at the crest of the hill, and waves. You wave back. Your wife leans her head on your shoulder, and you both watch her fade into the light, not with sorrow, with knowing, because love isn't about holding on, it's about sending forward. Quirky fact: some medieval traveling minstrels carried books of origin, family crests, songs, tokens of the villages they hailed from. They weren't just entertainment, they were vessels of identity, living libraries. You go home. The house is quieter, but not empty. You sit by the hearth, her scroll beside you, and you whisper, "Go, child, and sing us everywhere." And you realize she is your legacy, your love, in motion, and you've lived the kind of story worth singing. The house is still now, only the crackle of the fire, the soft sigh of the wind against wooden walls, and the faintest memory of a song remain. You lean back in your chair. It creaks just slightly, a familiar sound, like an old friend clearing their throat. The warmth from the hearth curls against your legs. Your hands are folded in your lap, and your eyes are heavy but calm. Outside, the stars have returned. The same stars that watched your first awkward glance across the apple stall, now watching over a quiet home, a shared love, a song drifting gently over hills too far to see. You imagine Hermira sitting somewhere new, parchment across her knees, firelight flickering in her eyes, humming softly the tune you once mumbled, while fixing a roof. Your story, still moving, still alive, and you've done your part. You've lived deeply. Loved, truly lost, laughed, built, mended. You didn't change kingdoms or crown kings, but you changed a life, too, actually. And in this world, in any world, that is no small thing. So close your eyes, now. Let the day slip gently from your shoulders. Let the past be soft around you. You are remembered, you are sung, and you are, above all else, loved. Sleep well, old soul. The story is safe, and tomorrow will come, as it always has, with tea, birdsong, and the whisper of a life well lived. Good night.